Russia may be bogged down in its fruitless war with Ukraine, but the pendulum of war could swing back at any time, which would then lead to another country finding itself in Putin's crosshairs. And it's not only likely to happen, but it's coming much sooner than you think. Let's jump to the summer of 2025. After winning a second term in office, President Donald Trump has made good on his campaign rhetoric and shut down all American aid to Ukraine. The European allies have been left in a lurch. For 2 years, they have treated the Ukraine war as an afterthought, a conflict they thought they could win through sanctions and token packages of military aid to Ukraine. However, despite having $300 billion of its war chest frozen in Western accounts, Russia has had enough currency reserve to weather the worst effects of the sanctions. Now the Russian economy is buoyed by the mobilization of a wartime economy, allowing Russia to pump out massive amounts of, if not modern, at least capable and numerous arms. Western aid to Ukraine is still far superior in capabilities over anything Russia is fielding. Bradley and Marder IFVs make mincemeat out of Russian BMPs, but it's extremely limited in number. The West has finally realized how serious a threat Russia actually posed, but with the pullout of the US from the Ukrainian coalition, Europe's help was not enough. With a renewed summer offensive, a Ukrainian loss is all but inevitable, and European countries suddenly realize that their equipment is better used shoring up their own defenses than going into a losing war in Ukraine, accelerating its inevitable defeat. But Russia has a big problem. Their economy appears to have not just stabilized but actually strengthened since 2023. The sanctions don't seem to be having much of an effect on the nation, except that's not true. Russia's renewed economic vigor is solely down to a single factor: wartime mobilization. Russian investments have gone overwhelmingly into single-use items, like tanks, missiles, and artillery. The production of these goods is keeping the economy afloat, but they produce no economic return. Russia is slowly cannibalizing itself, and if it demobilizes its military, the economic crash to come could end up doing what the Ukrainians couldn't do alone, bringing Russia to its knees. However, single-use items like tanks, artillery, and missiles are capable of producing an economic return in one specific way. As Kyiv is finally taken by a Russian assault and Ukraine is pacified, its forces don't slow down for more than a week before pushing for Ukraine's western border. Now, Russia has finally accomplished what it hoped to do in the first few weeks of its disastrous invasion of Ukraine: establish a land corridor to the breakaway Moldovan region of Transnistria. Moldova is not a NATO member, and even as NATO forces mobilize to deter further Russian aggression, nobody's willing to stop Russia's armored assault into the small former Soviet bloc country. Many Western intelligence officials and defense analysts predict this future if certain pieces happen to fall into place for the Russians in the coming months. Some may be skeptical about further Russian aggression after subduing Ukraine, but that is largely due to propaganda or misinformation. It's true, the war in Ukraine has savaged Russian forces. Its vaunted paratrooper divisions are in tatters after being used to stop Ukrainian breakthroughs in the 2023 summer offensive, as is its attack helicopter fleet, either sacrificed to prevent said breakthroughs or suffering big losses to Ukrainian sabotage, drones, or HIMARS attacks. It was this attack helicopter fleet that was largely responsible for blunting most of Ukraine's offensives in 2023, and Ukraine got its revenge the moment it received ATACMS from the United States, savaging a Russian helicopter base deep in the rear and destroying numerous airframes. Russia's lost an estimated 46% of its tanks, with what's left largely being ever more ancient Cold War stock. Its vaunted First Guards tank army, meant to take on the absolute best that NATO had to throw at it, was devastated not once but in 2 separate battles during 2022 and 2023, significantly eroding its capabilities. It'll be years before the First Guards has the capability to do the job Russian propaganda said it was originally capable of, taking on the best American, German, and British tank forces. Combat aviation losses have also been significant, though the loss of hardware alone is not enough to significantly dent Russian air operations, except in one key regard. Russia is now down to 6 airborne early warning aircraft after losing some to Ukrainian SAM ambushes, and when maintenance is figured into it, it's doubtful Russia can maintain 24-hour coverage over the battlefield anymore. Russia's biggest losses have come from pilots who have either been killed or too injured to continue flying, a loss compounded by Russia's policy of assigning the most dangerous missions to the most experienced pilots. It's a good theory, but in actuality it creates a pilot crisis where Russian pilots, who already received a fraction of the training flight hours that their American counterparts do, are increasingly inexperienced. This inexperience, combined with an inability to deconflict the skies, has led to poor performance, increased losses, and numerous friendly fire incidents. This brings us back to a Russian attack on Moldova. It's a likely target after a victory in Ukraine. Moldova already has a separatist enclave on its border with Ukraine that's populated by a large amount of Russian sympathizers. This breakaway region has thrown off Moldovan government control, and it wishes to join the Russian Federation. Known as Transnistria, it's not the home of Dracula, but it is home to 2,000 war crime-loving Russian troops. This Russian contingent was deployed to Transnistria to act as a tripwire. If the Moldovan government attempted to reunite Transnistria by force or any third party, then they'd have to go through those Russian troops to do it. Now, we've since learned that going through 2,000 Russian troops is probably easy enough for a well-trained troop of Boy Scouts to accomplish, but that is not the point. The point is that this tripwire force would immediately trigger an escalation with Russia and the shipping of even more combat power into Moldova. With Russian troops attacked, the Russian Federation would have every excuse it needs to then trample the Moldovan government and install a pro-Russian puppet leader, as Russia has been wanting to do for years. For now, Russia's unable to make serious moves in Moldova, although numerous Russian plots against the government have been uncovered and foiled to date. However, if Ukraine fell, that would place the Russian military right on the Moldovan border, giving Russia many more options. Further, Moldova has one critical weakness that all but ensures a Russian invasion. Moldova is a member of neither NATO nor the EU. While the nation has candidate status with the EU, it does not have membership yet, and thus few of the protections. Moldova applied for EU membership in the wake of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, knowing that they were next on the chopping block. Prior to the war, the population was nearly evenly split, with only a small majority preferring to join the EU over the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union. However, in order to join, Moldova needs to undertake a series of reforms, including improving its economic efficiency, reducing corruption, enforcing property rights, reducing the size of state-owned enterprises, improving energy efficiency, and improving its labor market. The Moldovan president thus set a timeline for membership in 2030, by which time it may be too late. A failed effort to support Ukraine would likely leave European nations unwilling to support the far smaller and more vulnerable Moldova against the Russian military. Moldova, a fraction the size of Ukraine and having little international support, would fall in a matter of weeks at most. But after this, Russia could very well escalate the conflict further, likely targeting the Balkans and counting on the fact that without US backing, NATO simply won't have the resolve to fight for the tiny and extremely vulnerable Balkan nations. With a battle-hardened military, fresh Ukrainian conscripts in its ranks, and an economy that depends on conquering territory to survive, Russia would have little incentive to stop after taking just one bite out of Europe. Now, go check out why the world economy has no need for Russia, or watch this video instead.